I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse. First off, don't smoke. This isn't even a lighter, it's a fire stick. But what I wanna do is I wanna take you on a tour of the haunted hotspots of downtown Los Angeles. Something I used to do over and over again for weekend after weekend after weekend, over and over and over again. Except I'm gonna up the ante a little bit this time. Because I'm gonna take you on this ghost tour of downtown Los Angeles in 1947. Let's go. And even though we are in the era of Mickey Cohen and really an exciting time in the noir life of downtown Los Angeles, I'm going to cut the gangster shtick right now. We are in the 2020s, and I am going to be wearing glasses. Joking aside, one of those questions that you get asked a lot, if you could go to any time period in history, where would you go? One of the times on my short list would be 1947 Los Angeles, specifically. It's such a unique part of history and time period and a town that I love. It was such an amazing time in the history of Los Angeles, both historically, what was going on, and of course the glitz and glamour of the golden age of Hollywood. And on top of it, you have one of the biggest mysteries in American history that unfolded at this time and is still a mystery today. And that would be, of course, the 1947 slaying of Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia. Fortunately for me, a video game came along called LA Noire several years ago, so I'm praying that they come up with a sequel at some point soon. Made by the same people that did Grand Theft Auto, so you know they do these big open world adventure type of games. With painstaking detail, they recreated a huge chunk of Los Angeles. The downtown area was what we're going to be taking a look at today, but they did Hollywood as well. We'll take a quick look at that map to show you how huge this was and the amazing amount of detail they put into recreating Los Angeles as it looked in 1947. Very, very, very accurate. We'll see, not perfect, but super close. It's unbelievable how many square miles of Los Angeles they brought back to life in the 1940s. And if anybody knows of any other games like this, just in the sense that they did something so historically accurate, and actually it doesn't even have to be historic. If you have a game that's set in present day Chicago, I'll take a look at it and maybe I'll give you a virtual haunted tour of Chicago, because after all, that's my book back there I wrote, Voices from the Chicago Grave. I love haunted history. I love history in general, local histories, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. Oh, and one of the other things that I thought, would be fun, a good reason to go back to 1940s Los Angeles. The population was a lot less back then. If you could have LA be just as big as it is today with half the population, it'd be a lot more fun to drive around. As a lot of the people on my tour probably know, we spent a lot of time telling ghost stories in the vehicle, which was actually a lot of fun. Good get to know you time. But we had to kill time driving between downtown LA and Hollywood and back. And another reason why I wanted to cut the act, that it's not 1947 and I'm not going to be giving this tour as if we were in the 1940s, is that creepy stuff happened after the 40s that is on the tour. And of course, what everybody wants to see, if you hear about going to downtown LA for a ghost tour, or maybe just in general, because it's such a mainstream, well-known, bizarre story now. The Cecil Hotel in Elizabeth Lamb's case, that is something very, very modern and actually happened and was unfolding as my tour was going on. So it was really strange that we were going by the Cecil kind of as new information was coming to light, as this person was reported missing and then found, and of course, details began to come out. But anyway, we're going to see the Cecil Hotel in its glory in the 1940s. It opened in the 20s. I should stop yammering on now, and we should get in our DeLoreans, go back in time, and we'll also be traveling around in some vehicles that are a little bit nicer than what our tour vans were. So before we get into it, as I mentioned, I wanted to show you this map. So here is the LA River, and we are in downtown LA here. Olympic Boulevard to our south. Anything that you can see is a place that we can go. These are historically important areas. Anywhere you see the camera, LA Public Library, iconic building, Bradbury Building, one of the most amazing buildings in downtown LA. Wish you could go into it in the game, but you can't, unfortunately. Where you see the guy running, the red guy, that means he's a fugitive we can go after, and we're not going to do that because we didn't do that on the tour. We're not going to do it here. Actually, we will start out in this area, Pueblo de Los Angeles. But before we go there, so the main part of downtown LA today is down in this area. LA itself started up here at Pueblo. We'll talk more about that shortly. But as we head out this way, you don't just jump from downtown LA into Hollywood. You can actually go all of the way there. And here we go, Hollywood proper. Sunset, Hollywood, Franklin. How do you get to Hollywood? You take Fountain. As the old joke goes, that's more appealing to locals than anyone else. I wish we get some more of this area down to our lower left, because this is the area where I lived in this very old and very haunted house down on 8th Avenue. And I know that because everybody would accidentally go to 8th Street down here, but I was just to the left, not too far away, which is actually the area, the neighborhood roughly, Leimert Park, where the Black Dahlia's body was found, also known as Mid-City. And of course, something else interesting to note, compared to today, we were talking about the 1940s, no freeways yet. No 10, 101, 405s. They weren't too far after this, but they certainly weren't there yet. For our tour, we will start where the tour itself originally started. We moved our starting point because this area was just too popular for parking, but we used to start right here at Pueblo de Los Angeles. As you see, we are in a stylish 1940s coupe. Normally, it would be really cool to drive around LA in a convertible, but of course it's raining. Thank you, video game. Even in this virtual world, it ain't perfect. And you see the old trolley cars, which LA did used to have those, but not so much anymore. Amazingly, those tracks are still underneath the streets, and I know because we had the streets dug up in front of our house one time, and there they were, the old trolley car tracks. We were immediately next to the Pico house, the biggest hotel west of the Mississippi when it was first built. And it kind of gives me chills just walking up to here, just driving up to here, because you see that old church to the left as we get cut off there. Welcome to LA. Plaza de Los Angeles is to the right. Right now there is a gazebo in that space, and the gazebo is there, and it looks accurate. Today, it's just amazing how accurate and realistic this is. Now today, these streets are all blocked off. This is all just a big pedestrian walkway area. So we would stop the bus, or the bus would be waiting about where the car is now, but we would walk through this area. And so we're gonna walk through this area just as if we were walking around back when I was giving the tour. And directly in front of us, that is Union Station. Now, why did I start my tour here initially? Again, it is such a hot spot. There's so much going on in this area right here. It's just such an amazing place, and it is the origins of Los Angeles. Olvera Street, as we're walking down here, does not dip down like this, but otherwise very accurate. The Spanish were the first people to see Los Angeles, and they saw it as they were sailing by, and they just kind of made a note that we have to go back, and claim that area as our own. And eventually, when global expansion began to happen, they thought, well, we got to go claim California now, or else Russia is going to get it. And of course, Russia did start to make their way down the coast, starting in Alaska. But Spain sent 11 families to this area, now known as Pueblo de Los Angeles and Olvera Street, to settle. And this is the birthplace of Los Angeles, so a really perfect place for the tour to begin. And this area we're walking right now, you'd never see it this isolated, this quiet, because this is a bustling little alleyway, pedestrian only, full of shops and kiosks and things to do. And right here, amazingly, in full color, as it looks in real life, the Avila Adobe. This is the oldest house in Los Angeles. Hey, keep it easy, tour. This is a tour for one. You're gonna do things on my time, so just chill out, man. This building is here, and this is a haunted site, and this little porch itself is a haunted location. So Don Francisco Avila was appointed a first governor of the area, and he was a very successful rancher back home. So he didn't really need to go and fulfill this appointment. But the agreement was that they would build a nice house for him to live in, and they would give him all of this land from where we're seeing here, Pueblo, all the way. And we actually can't even get all the way over to it because our map cuts off here. But further west of where we are, where the La Brea tar pits are, that would all be his personal land for cattle ranching. So he had a huge amount of land that he was given to him. So, hey, the price was right. Now, when he passed away, He had remarried. He was getting up there in age. She wasn't that old, but for the time period. He passed away, leaving a young widow behind. And it is said that she was so traumatized by his passing and her becoming a widow that within this building, which, by the way, if you go there today, you are able to walk through this building for free. It's an open museum. It is a cultural part of LA's history, so it's very, very accessible. But there is a bedroom in there, their bedroom, where it's said that they still hear her weeping. They also hear his heavy work boots walking through the house, walking down this little front porch that we're walking on now. Additionally, people will see him walking on this front porch, sitting on it, and walking around the alleyway. The thing that's really fun is Los Angeles is such a busy, active location that sometimes it's really hard to feel like you're ever alone. Which, of course, for ghost hunting is what you need. You really need peace and quiet. This area, surprisingly, for as big and bustling as it can be, after about 9 p.m., it really gets quiet. Just for the sake of safety, and this is not that dangerous of an area compared to some other ones, of course, but I would still go with friends. But you're able to walk through here at night, and it doesn't even have to be that late, when it is really quiet, if you want to try to observe something paranormal going on here at the house. This is a place that I would love to do an overnight, with permission, investigation of being able to stay inside the house. The house itself is actually a big square with a courtyard in the middle. A lot of it was damaged and lost over the years in earthquakes. But yeah, it would be interesting to see within this game what state it's in. Now, something that we're not seeing here, which I really wish we would, because it is a really unique location, and actually it might be in proximity here. In real life, it's down a little ways, but as we see the word restaurant there, this does feel like this could be another spot on the tour. We'll let Google translate for us. Golondrina. La Golondrina Cafe, the oldest and first Mexican restaurant in Los Angeles, still in operation today, owned by the same family that first opened it up. Amazing. Really a great place. And by the way, in this tour, I'm not going to have time to get into all the stories and all the history, so I'm just going to go kind of broad strokes with it. When you go there, please do note that overhead there are grapevines, because that place started out as a winery. It had a couple of different incarnations over the years. One of the firsthand stories we got when we were going there, telling stories, talking to employees, was the difficulty they have in doing renovations at the location, because somebody will be working on the location, is about to hammer in a nail, will go and make a measurement, reach down, force hammer, and the hammer is missing, and it's on the other side of the room. It's something that oddly happened over and over and over again, to the point that if they have to do renovations on the location, they do it in teams. I think partially because guys get a little bit freaked out with that going on, but also you need a spotter for the tools that seem to move around or go missing on their own. Now, one of the things that I love about this location so much is, as we talked about down there at the Avila Adobe, the first governor, and we head over to this side and we see the Pico house. Unfortunately, it should say Pico house at the top there. You see that blank space. But we are going from the first governor of California under Spanish rule to the final governor, and that is Pico, General Pico, who was definitely a very good businessman as well. He built this location. As I mentioned earlier, this was the largest and most luxurious hotel west of the Mississippi at the time that it was built. It was built in the late 1860s. I believe it was actually in 1870 when it first opened. And as we talked about on the tour, this had a front row seat to one of the darkest days in LA history. And to give perspective of where we are in history, the events that happened in this area around here, which we get into a lot more detail on the tour, were the big national events that wiped the news of the Great Chicago Fire off the front page of the national papers. So we were talking about October 1871, and that was the Chinese Massacre, I believe at this time. But definitely in the 1870s, Chinatown would go, as you see right in front of where I'm looking right there, it came down and around. Right now, if you look in that direction, that's where those very extravagant front gates of Chinatown are, but it actually kind of came down and wrapped around. And I feel like our perspective is off a little bit, because right over here, I should be looking at the Union Station. We'll rediscover that by walking around a little bit. Actually, you can see the tower of Union Station right in front of me right there.
But at Pico House, back here, Ghost Adventures even did an episode on it, and they talked to a security guard that would get pushed violently down on his back as he was doing his rounds, as he was coming down staircases. So we are talking about confrontational spirits, angry spirits, entities that are definitely wanting to violently make their presence known. The other thing that's really impressive and I love about Pico House is that, let's go see if we can get another look at it really quick before we leave, is that on the roof line, yes, on the roof, and that is LA City Hall, in a shadowy cloak-like figure in the background there. For the longest time, by rule, the tallest building in LA. Anyway, at Pico House, on the roof, people would see General Pio Pico walking around the roof, surveying the property, surveying the land. And what I really love about Plaza here is that you have the first and the most recent, the final under Mexican rule, both seemingly just hanging out, keeping an eye on the location as they did in life. One of the things that I love about the area, and maybe why this area is so haunted, is because today it looks probably more as it did in the 1800s than it did even in the 1940s. If that makes sense. They modernized it and then brought it back to how it used to look. So today it looks more accurate to the 1800s, and maybe that's why this place is so haunted, because entities are comfortable here. This is where they're happy and comfortable in life, and this is where they continue to be comfortable in their afterlife. Okay, and there we see it's not actually this far hidden away, but here we see Union Station, and I'm just pointing it out really briefly because this is the area where during the Chinese Massacre of 1871, a makeshift gallows was erected, and it was on that property that a lot of people lost their lives completely, horrifically, for no good reason other than just racism. That was what was going on. There was a lot of racial tension in Los Angeles back then, directed specifically at the Chinese population, and it came to a head in this area, and right there, specifically that area. People very frequently ask me, is Union Station haunted? I'd say most likely, but it's one of those places that it's just so loud and bustling that it's really hard to have an encounter there, because if there's a whisper, you're not going to hear it. The best thing to do would be to talk to the security guards. Those are the people who are there at all weird hours of the night, and those are the people that would know. Now, usually when I was giving my tour, I would also direct people's attention up the landscape, and I love that even in this virtual world, there is a hill there. That is Moore Hill. And it looks very, very different today. And I'm not going to get into the story yet because we're going to drive up there and see what it looks like. There's a lot of different buildings over in that area over the years. But that is Moore Hill. We'll see it from the ground first, and then we're going to go up. We've got some other weird things to talk about in the meantime first. So let's get back to our car and appreciate the convertible now that the rain has stopped. Okay, so we are at the intersection where today there's a beautiful, grand gateway to Chinatown monument that goes over the top of the road here. Goes over the road, you drive underneath it. Certainly was not here at this time, at least not according to the game. You know, when I talk about the paranormal, I always like to talk about everything, not just ghost stories, aliens, all that kind of stuff. I want it all, and we are about to talk about LA's most iconic cryptid. There is a legend that underneath Los Angeles, there is a race of humanoid reptiles. And I know this sounds like QAnon. This sounds like modern legend and lore, as asinine as the world is today. But the belief, going back to ancient times, ancient Native American times, was that there was, they called them their reptilian brothers that lived underground. And then it seemed to perhaps be coming true as people found that there were these huge caverns that were created by natural gas pockets, that, as the legends would go, that perhaps that's where these people lived, that these were these rooms. And so in the early 1900s, actually I believe it just in the 1930s, so as this game was made, it was fairly new. There were prospectors that were going out and trying to dig into these caverns because it was believed these reptilians had untold wealth and untold knowledge. And so the largest cavern in Los Angeles was right here, right where we are now today. And I can't imagine this building would have been here back then. This is a very nondescript building anyway, so they're probably just filling in space, because if they did actually dig right in this area, you'd only have had about 10 years to not only fill in the hole of the drill, but also this huge cavern that they were digging into, which was a real cavern. It really was there. And they dug, I believe, over 100 feet deep. It was one of the biggest drilling projects of the time period. Well, lo and behold, they didn't get there before their permits were rejected because the hole was becoming unsafe. So therefore, the mystery lives on. Were there an ancient race of reptilian humanoids living underground under Los Angeles with these sprawling networks of caves that went throughout all of LA? This huge ancient civilization. Maybe time will tell. Bonus Easter egg time for any movie fans. Tunnel, which you would know well from Blade Runner, and let's make it fast and exciting. This is a bit of a tourist attraction, even though it's just a long tiled tunnel because of the movie. We are going up Moore Hill. Right now, there's a huge monument to our left side. It's actually the largest, ain't nothing here right now. The largest concrete military monument in all of America. The weird facts that you end up learning when you are running a tour. This area is very important in a number of ways, and it's kind of unfortunate that there's appears to be nothing really here right now. All right, you see there is Pico Hotel, as we talked about, and over here is Moore Hill. Really still nothing on top of it. So the interesting thing is that that's higher now. It's higher in the 1940s than it is today. Partially, there could be some discrepancies with the game design, but part of it too is that a lot of it was carved into to make way for the 101 freeway. Fort Moore was built up there. I think that was the first. Actually, the first use was an old pioneer cemetery that was relocated. Over the years, it was a school. It was a brewery. It was LA's first brewery. And of course, a military installation. But by the time the base was finished being built, the war it was built for was over, so it really didn't see very much action. That is a location that today is again a school. And as I mentioned, it was first a cemetery. Therefore, you can guess it is haunted. And indeed, whenever they do renovations, even recently in the mid-2000s, just not long ago, they found more and more bodies on that property. So it's a thing that happens all over the world, all over the country for sure. An early cemetery is established, the land becomes too valuable, the bodies get moved, but more often than not, maybe the bodies were buried kind of sloppily to begin with. Record keeping was bad, records were lost, or you just have lazy workers who moved the headstones and not the bodies. That is something that apparently happened here. Many of the people were reburied in Rosedale Cemetery, which is in the mid-city area, again, where I used to live. But of course, not all the bodies. A lot of them are still underneath the high school, which is the most iconic looking high school you'd ever imagine. LA High School number 9. It's a performing arts high school now. And we have some specific stories that came out of doing the tour. People that we talked to that witnessed things themselves. And that is always exciting when you can start to generate new stories just by talking to people that are on your tour. Okay, so as we continue to slowly make our way through downtown Los Angeles, we are going to head over to one of my favorite places in all of downtown LA, and that is the Biltmore Hotel. Biltmore Hotel is, again, I already said that the Bradbury is one of the most beautiful buildings in LA, which is true. It's one of the most iconic. Again, thanks partially to Blade Runner. Here we go. We can already see the Biltmore coming up on the left side, that building about a block away ahead to the left. In the 1940s, pardon me, Cabby, in the 1940s, the front door was back here. It has been moved over a block, so we get to see it as it looked back in the day. And if it looks familiar to anybody here, well, you've definitely seen it in a number of different movies and TV shows constantly. I really can't even go through the list. I was just watching The Good Place, and an episode was shot in the lobby here. This is going to be a little bit underwhelming, as we can't see into it because it is such an amazing, grand location right across the street from Pershing Square. Getting into some modern LA crime history. This is where the LA riots originated. The first fighting broke out right there at Pershing Square. Not one of the brighter moments of what we like to talk about and celebrate, but hey, it's part of history. It's really what happened. We'll go around to the other side of the Biltmore and we'll see how it looks. But this, we were talking about film and TV. I say, for as haunted as it is, it's got the most famous ghost, maybe of all time, that originated right here, and that is Slimer. Much of Ghostbusters was not shot in New York, it was shot in LA, and this was the fancy schmancy hotel that the Ghostbusters, where they first came in contact with Slimer. And this is a location, confirmed for sure. Many places get mixed up with it. Usually the Cecil Hotel gets confused with it, but this was actually the last place the Black Dahlia was ever seen alive. She was making phone calls frantically from a bank of phones, probably on the other side where we just drove from, and we'll continue on our way. But yes, that's where she was frantically making her final phone calls, and a car came and picked her up, probably right back there. And then she wasn't seen for several days until finally her bisected, cut in half body was discovered in a field just barely off the road in Leimert Park. Of course, today it is just somebody's front yard, kind of cryptic and amazing and weird, surreal, but that's how that went. Sadly, we don't really know. Yes, there are all sorts of legends about this guy, George Hodel, who was definitely a creep and definitely a bad person, but he's probably not the killer, but his son is the one that really picked up the story and ran with it. Obviously, he had a complicated relationship with his dad. Most people that really get into the ins and outs of that case know that he's not the guy. So anyway, I'm glossing over that quickly because we are at everybody's favorite location today, the Cecil Hotel. And yeah, here it is. This is the place where Elizabeth Short was last seen. It was in the elevator of this building where some of the eeriest video ever captured exists. It's the last known footage of her acting very, very, very strangely. And I wish I could take the camera and float around, but unfortunately can't do that in this game. But the place was already super haunted, and it was already a place that was on my tour even without getting into Elizabeth Short's stories. I'm sorry, not Elizabeth Short, but Lisa Lam, but she's kind of in that same company when it comes to mysterious LA deaths, unnatural deaths. And that is because I work in film. I work in production for a very long time. And when I would get together and hang out with friends and they would find out that, hey, this guy's into ghost stories, they would always bring up the Cecil Hotel. I said, no, I don't know too much about it. What's going on? And they would always say that, this is a place where it was really a rent by the hour kind of a hostel type of location, very inexpensive. So when you are on a budget and you're trying to shoot a short film or a movie out of your own pocket, you find the cheapest places in the planet to shoot, and you sneak your equipment in, you get your shots, and you call it a day. So I talked to a number of people that made movies or parts of movies in the Cecil, and they just always felt very, very uncomfortable and as if somebody was in the room with them, watching them disapprovingly. It was always a very negative feeling. So many people came to me with that same exact story, which was odd. It put this place on the radar for me. And of course, then you find out that Jack Unterweger, serial killer, stayed here. The Night Stalker stayed here up until the time he was made and then tried to get away. But of course, the hardy citizens of Boyle Heights whooped his ass as he tried to run away, and he was apprehended. But this was one of his last residences. He did have a couple of different rooms in a seedier part of town, as this was. And the poor designers of this hotel, they wanted to have a more affordable business class alternative to the Biltmore, which we were just at, because that place is high luxury there. So hey, here's something that's more affordable for the common businessman. Shortly after it opens, the Great Depression hits. Business travel is not happening as much as usual, and a lot of people began to commit suicide. Well, everywhere, sadly, it's true, but here at the Hotel Cecil, it was not an uncommon thing, and I'll share one story. Again, we've got so many more stories on the tour, but one story that came out of the tour was at the very end. It was a mom and daughter that were on the tour, and the daughter, I want to say, was about 11 years old, ironically from Canada, that visiting Los Angeles. Lisa Lam was from Canada as well, and oh boy, you pull up and give the presentation about the Cecil, and then find out that, oh, that's where they're staying, that they've got rooms at the Cecil. The mom was kind of apologizing for her daughter, how she was acting, but I didn't notice. I was, trying to talk to a whole bunch of people. She said that they went to check into the room. She opened the door, walked in. Her daughter stayed in the hallway and just said, someone killed themselves here. She could just feel. And that was one of the reasons they took the ghost tour, was because she was dealing with the fact that she was a very sensitive person and able to pick up on a lot of things. And then when I say, hey, here's the Cecil Hotel, among all of these other stories, this is a place that's really known for suicides. It just really confirmed what this little girl was picking up on. Fascinating and amazing when that happens. Also, I just want to take a little drive to the left, because today, and really, as you know, if you guys watched any of the Hotel Cecil documentaries recently, this whole area for a very long time has been a depressed area. It is full of homeless, just gobs and gobs of homeless, and it has been for decades and decades. So I just wanted to see this street, see these sidewalks, free of tents, which is not something I've ever seen before. And, you know, hopefully people can get helped out and society can pull together and make downtown LA look like this again one day. I love LA. I love LA history. There's so much to celebrate about LA, past and present, but obviously, yes, there are some issues that need to be addressed, and there's no easy answers for them. Okay, we are gonna wrap it up for now. Are these the only haunted locations in downtown LA? Of course not. There are so many more, and I missed my turn. So if there are specific locations in downtown LA or Hollywood you want to see, or even just a specific location that didn't exist in 1947, you know it today, know it and love it today, but want to see what it was like back then, leave a comment and I will make another video to check it out. We will be doing another video to cover downtown Hollywood. I haven't even unlocked that part of the game yet, but I figured I would end it right here at the City Hall, this gorgeous, amazing building. If you have not had the opportunity, definitely go and check it out. You are able to get up there to the observation deck, I think 5 days a week, any business day. Absolutely worth a look. Beautiful building in a beautiful town. Also, yes, haunted. That's why we're here. This is a place that saw so many important moments in time and history. And yeah, this is a reason we had to time shift it to this current day, because I couldn't talk about it as if it was 1947, or else we wouldn't be able to talk about the Manson murders. You had the Manson girls hanging out. They were very famously photographed protesting, hanging out in this area where we are walking around. And there are cases, stories not associated with the Manson family, but just in general, where proceedings will be interrupted by protesters, by phantom protesters who disappear after making their voice known. But yes, thank you for coming along at this idea that I've had for a long time. Wanted to take a look at downtown Los Angeles as it looked in 1947. Really neat to see the Cecil Hotel, and just really cool to see the Plaza de Los Angeles area, how everything's laid out. It's so close to absolute perfection, and yeah, it's nice to be able to drive around and not have to worry about paying to park or anything like that. Anyway, thank you all for watching. If you have any requests, please let me know. I'll be back with more videos soon. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to tip your driver just by hitting the like button. It's cool.